Welcome in, Scolders. What's going on, guys? We got the whole crew here, minus Juddy. We got Tom, Pat, Chris, and myself here. Just the boys episode. We're gonna break down just what's going on this week here, April 11th. We got the draft 2 weeks from tonight, exactly. So a little bit more draft talk. Can't get enough of it. I'm sure it's until it happens. We're just gonna keep finding out new facts and more smoke. It's just fun, regardless of whether or not it's true. We're going to get Chris's take on some of the stuff we talked about, not all of it, his quarterbacks, and what we think we're going to do at 11, moving up, of course, like we discussed, and then just kind of talk about some fun stuff, what's happened in the past couple of days here. OJ Simpson, RIP. You got the
Kinda.
Shohei deal. Man, it's just a wild time. It feels like almost every day there's another breaking story. So let's start off with Chris here. You got a fun stat for us?
I do. So, got a lot of good stats, but this is probably the best one that I've come up with. I looked at stats for the last 30 years for quarterbacks drafted second through 10th. So, there's been 34 of them taken, not number one, second through 10. And only 9 of those 34 quarterbacks have ever thrown for 30 plus touchdowns in a season. And only 14 of those 34 went on to make 80 plus starts in the NFL.
Well, what I do want to do is I want to have a draft history episode maybe in the next week or two where we go into the Vikings draft history, but then we also do like quarterbacks draft history, so then we can actually come up with some fun lists and facts and try
Yeah.
to guess the player, so we can kind of move on from that. But
I have one actually really good stat. In the last 25 years, who are the only two first round quarterbacks to throw less passes in their first 3 years than Trey Lance? So, Trey Lance, he's only in his
Two first round
he's
quarterbacks.
first round quarterback. So, Trey Lance has thrown
So
102 passes.
Aaron Rodgers
Yep.
Jordan Love
and Jordan Love. Yeah,
Yep. That's
that's so
it.
stupid.
Yeah, it's out of like 60 first round quarterbacks. There's only
Trey
two
Lance is just
quarterbacks.
waiting for his opportunity.
He's taking over next year when
Yeah.
Dak walks.
Incredible.
I heard that they were looking at quarterbacks this year.
That's what Schefter tweeted that out the other day.
Yep.
Everyone's throwing out smoke on quarterbacks now.
Maybe they
It's
should
nuts.
take Penix.
It's so the quarterback stuff is so like overdone. I almost feel like none of it's true. Like like this QB tax that we've talked about the last few days. Like I just can't imagine a team will actually end up doing that. See the Vikings adding that 25th or that 2025 first round in. I think that they'll just say 11, 23, and a third and take it or leave it.
I think the closest comparison is the Trey Lance trade. I don't remember where the Niners were initially, but I think that's where you can base a lot of the price
I have
on
it right here.
for team going up.
They were 12.
They were 12.
So they went from 12 to 3, and they gave up they swapped first rounds, and they gave up 2 first round picks and a future third.
So that's the same. That's the
That's
same
the same
price.
thing.
Yeah.
So, I've kind of got this thing up here where teams that moved up to get a quarterback, they did pay that quarterback tax, and every single time, it's I think Josh Allen is the only time it's really worked out where they've paid a premium to go get that guy. Like, do you think Kwesi is sitting there looking at history and being like, okay, moving up for a quarterback isn't a bad decision by itself, but overpaying, it really hasn't worked out in the past. We've got names like Sam Darnold on this list, Justin Fields, Trey Lance,
Trubisky.
Bryce Young. Well, I don't
Trubisky,
think
they just flopped one pick.
That wasn't like a big overpaying.
No, but it was
like
surprising.
Josh Rosen is on this. Like, I don't know.
It's a crapshoot. It really is, and that's where you have to put your trust in your front office and in your head coach that they're going to be able to put this kid in an environment to succeed. And that's it. You mentioned Josh Allen being one of the only successes on that list, and you go back and you look at his college numbers. He was awful in college. Like, I mean, just an athlete, but he was not good. Like, completion percentages were in the low 50s
50s.
at one
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
So and I mean he came in and clearly they saw something in him
Yeah,
and
they bet
had
on the
the
traits.
supporting cast exactly
Yeah.
and so you just have to hope that the Vikings have that system in place for a guy to come in and succeed
Yeah.
and
I mean,
even Josh Allen wasn't great his rookie year either.
he was real
He was
bad.
Um, yeah,
turnover
Beat the
prone. But
Vikings though.
yeah,
Beat the
yep,
Vikings.
I remember that.
I
He
mean,
hurdled one of our D-backs.
the funny thing about that is that the players on this list, I feel like Josh Allen was the biggest reach at the time. Like I mean, now Trey Lance, you could make an argument for. He, only had what 10 starts or whatever it was, but I mean, everybody was like Josh Allen, obviously big arm, but like you said, 55% completion,
yeah,
percentage. But like Josh Rosen, people were looking at him as the best, the most pro-ready quarterback in that draft. Sam Darnold, people were thinking he was going to be a number one pick. Bryce Young, I mean, people thought he was going to be one or two. You know, but Josh Allen was the kind of the biggest reach, and it was you know, the best decision out of those eight quarterbacks or whatever.
Did you guys watch the press conference today with Quasey?
I did not.
I
Yeah,
caught
it
I
was
caught
just
about
a
10 minutes of it.
yeah. I mean, it wasn't anything super notable, but it was just all of the things we're discussing on the podcast is what the media addressed with him, and like, what do you think it's going to take to move up? What do you consider a fair price? Is there such thing as a quarterback tax? Do you consider how many quarterbacks are surefire hits? Like, what do you was he supposed to say? Oh, I think 5 quarterbacks are must lock future Pro Bowlers, and
He
after
should lie
that,
about everything. He should just lie.
100%. And
Which
he
which
did.
everybody else does too.
Yeah,
yeah,
he did. He came out and he said they like a number of quarterbacks. He would not disclose the exact number of quarterbacks that they did like in this class, but there was a direct quote, and I don't have it here or remember exactly what it was, but it was talking about the need to take swings and how to balance the fact that you are prone to miss when you take those swings, but the benefit of that and having that franchise quarterback. And he said that's clearly the most important position on the football field and said that sometimes you're going to have to take those swings. So that's where I know we talked about it ad nauseum earlier this week, but that's where I just continue to see a trade up being the most logical outcome for the
yep.
Vikings.
And I think after seeing the press conference, I never read too much into these, but from what it sounded like is he understands that there is a balance. You don't want to overpay for certain prospects, and you want to still find value. But at some point, if you need that position's there. You're gonna have to do it. It's not about winning the value argument every single time. You're gonna not get it every single time because it's not perfect. It's to find the number one position in sports.
At the same
So
time, like we kind of talked about it the other day, is you're still trading for the third or fourth quarterback off the board. And so, do you really want to overpay for the third or fourth quarterback off the board? Like I said, I'm okay with trading up, and I'm pretty much for it. I just giving up another first round pick when historically it's just kind of. I mean, drafting a quarterback is kind of a crapshoot in general, and then adding that first round, I don't know. Especially when I think 11 and 23 and a third and some change or whatever is pretty fair. I
yeah,
can't see Quasi just giving up
it
all
all
that
depends
value.
on the way the board falls, like we talked about earlier. And yeah, I think a happy medium would be perfect, where We trade up a little, don't have to mortgage the whole farm, and still get a guy that you're really confident in, and you can come to the press, you can come back to the team, say this is the guy we identified early. I mean, they say they've been doing work on these prospects for over 2 years. Like ever since they got hired, Quasi and KOC, they've been doing work on this quarterback class. So
Yeah.
they've been planning for the future, whether or not we knew it. I mean, they're always planning for the future, but that's why I'm most excited. So yeah, we don't have to egg on it too much with the
Well, wait,
quarterback
Chris, what
talk.
what camp are you in? Do you want to trade up?
But
Do you want
yeah,
to sit
we
tight?
will see what
I
Chris wants.
I I think we should try to trade up. Personally, I think it's only worth it for Drake May or Jaden Daniels. I I'm not sold on McCarthy. I I'm basically all in on Jaden Daniels, but I don't know. Would the Patriots even do like our first 2 round picks and a first round next year? Would they even do that, or would they ask for more?
I think they're saying Patriots fans are saying that should be the asking, or that should be the starting price. Is those
Right.
three first round picks?
Well, and what's the percentage that the Commanders are going to take Jane Daniels? Is it like 80%, or is it like kind of questionable between him and May?
Depends on who you
I
ask.
think it's 50-50 at this point. Like I really with them bringing Drake May in for an official visit, I think it's a lot less certain today than it was. I think Jaden Daniels is still the heavy betting favorite to go number two. So I think it's there's a good chance that that ends up being the way they go. And we talked a little bit, but like Cliff Kingsbury traditionally has had a more mobile quarterback, and there's obviously not a more mobile quarterback in this class than Jaden Daniels, but it's not like Drake May is a slouch of an athlete either. So
Right.
I think it could go either way, really.
Yeah, but I'm all in for trading our 2 picks and our first round pick. Just, I mean, we've been around for 50 years. We've never gone all in. Like, let's try it. I think Quessy is definitely the guy to actually go for it. And yeah, I mean, it's basically going to be like 50-50. If you trade up and get a top 3 quarterback, it's like 50% he's going to be franchise, or 50% GM's losing their job in a couple of years.
That's true.
One of
I have one conspiracy. Well, we were talking about the what the commies are going to do there at two. That goes all the way back to when Pat was mentioning with the Kingsbury news and all of that, and the new front office and Washington really wanting to make a splash, and they new ownership. You gotta take back the city. They gotta get people excited, and they're sitting there with the number two pick. If the Bears, for some reason, like another quarterback as much as Caleb Williams, or the Bears are going to bear, I I don't think I could see it happening. But if they swap down one pick, Caleb Williams goes to Washington, reunites with Kingsbury at one, and they probably would give up a future first to do that swap, which would be insane. And then the Bears would take McCarthy.
You think the Bears? You think McCarthy's their number two guy?
I, I'm just speculating. I
Oh,
don't know who their number. I don't know who their number one guy is. We don't know if it's Caleb Williams. Nobody's come out and said anything, but that would be
I,
wild.
and there's a
I
lot of
think I would
speculation early on in the draft process that Washington wanted to do that. I mean, that
Right,
was like
yeah.
one of the first rumors in January and early February. So
right. Especially when Fields was still around, but now that
yeah,
he's gone, it's a little more clear they're going to go with Williams. But
So Tom, I'm curious your hesitancy with this 2025 first or the inclusion of that for moving up. Does the fact that we have like 150 million, I don't know what the exact cap number is, but next year the cap is projected to shoot way up, and the Vikings are projected right now to be a top five team that has an extensive 100 plus million in available cap space. So yes, losing that first round pick is obviously going to sting from an immediate impact perspective, but having a lot more financial flexibility than we have had in as long as I can remember in terms of adding to this roster. Does that change your opinion at all about wanting to, or your intent to include that 2025 first in moving up?
A, yeah, that factors into it a little bit. I mean, it is nice to have all that cap space. I guess my mindset, like, I like building a team through the draft, and so and filling pieces in with free agency. Sometimes there's some good players out in free agency, and there's some bargain hunting and stuff like that. But the best players teams don't let walk. You know, so I just and if we say we take a quarterback and it doesn't work and we suck, it's another top 10 pick. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, look at the Bears. They're just trying it all over again
Yeah.
3 years later.
So I don't know. I'm just not sold on getting rid of that. And I think that you can move up without getting rid of it. I think this quarterback tax is right now it's kind of being manufactured. I think it's from different teams trying to milk as much as they can out of the Vikings or the Broncos or the Raiders or the Giants, whatever team is talking about moving up. I think it's kind of manufactured a little bit. So I don't want to just get sucked into it, and I don't
I
want the
think we
Vikings to
have
get
to.
sucked into it. But
We have to, because that's just the
see, I
way
don't
the
like.
NFL works.
Yeah,
It's
I don't like that thought process. I don't like having somebody else tell me that you have to do something and being
right, but
backed
if
into a
you
corner.
don't, some other team will, and you're going to be the one standing there with your hands in your pockets. It's
Well,
just
I think
how it
Michael
works.
Penix at 11 is a pretty decent consolation prize.
Yeah, but he's a lefty and he can't run.
Ah, four
Hey,
four five.
he did
That's
run, yeah,
yeah.
that 4 4, what was it, 4 5 6 40? Am
Can't
shocked.
run.
I am shocked by
It
looking
was
at that
sub four
clip that
five,
that's
wasn't
what
it?
it came.
Yeah.
Was it 4 4 6?
I think it was 4.46.
I
He chooses not to run.
watching him
Yeah.
on game day and run that actual 40, that did not look like a sub 4 5 40 to me. But
Long strides.
yeah,
So if
I was just reading something today that these are kind of obnoxious anonymous sources. An anonymous assistant coach said XYZ, but an NFL assistant coach said that he's a better quarterback today. I think Drake May and JJ McCarthy. So he's probably the most ready to start. If we wanted him to start right away, he probably can do that.
I'm just laughing because we're all talking about his 40-yard dash. He didn't even run for 40 yards last year. Of course, college takes into account kneel downs and stuff, but he ran for 8 yards last year. 8. He didn't even run for 10 yards.
Who cares? He threw 35 touchdowns and
Yeah,
led
but
Washington to a national championship
I want a mobile quarterback.
game.
I want someone that can. I don't care what their 40 time is. It's just all about knowing when to run and what the defense is giving you. You could run a 4.9 and you could still be an effective running quarterback. I mean, you only need to run 10 yards and in the open field. So
It's what Vikings fans have longed for how many years? Freaking two
since
decades.
Dante.
All four of us are Kirk fans.
Well,
I mean, he
yeah,
could run when he was absolutely forced into it, but it's
but
not like
Kirk
he's
was
lighting the world on fire with his scrambling
yeah, but
ability.
Kirk was a completely polished veteran team leader. You don't know what you're going to get with a 22, 23-year-old.
Well, yeah, but I mean, he can learn too.
But that's why I want Jaden Daniels. I mean, he ran for 1,000 yards last year. And he's not a lefty, he's a righty.
I don't think that matters too much. If you can sling the
I know.
ball, if you can get the ball to JJ, you'll be fine.
Yep.
Unless you're Nick Mullins, and then you still suck, even though you can force feed.
Well, he
JJ.
gets the ball to JJ.
Yeah, but he sucks.
That's all he could do.
Josh Dobbs gets the ball to JJ and gets him injured.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
sucks
that's
too.
true.
Little hospital pass. All right.
Yeah,
let's talk a little bit more about just some recent news on sports, right? What do you guys think? Shohei Otani, did he do it?
I'm
Oh,
not sure.
I'm
100%.
I don't.
super fascinated
I
by
don't
this.
know if that information I saw is correct, but apparently the total amount of bets was 183 million. How is that even possible? Like, how?
It's a lot of bets.
Apparently, he was betting on average 300,000 per day. Not Shohei, his translator. three
Yeah,
hundred thousand dollars per day. And
Ipe.
how are you losing? Like, if you're betting that much, don't you think you'd be like really smart about it? Like, I don't. Doesn't make any
They
sense.
also just came out, and not only is that a complete absurd number, they said that he used Shohei's bank account to spend $325,000 on 1,000 baseball cards.
Yeah.
Like,
I
I
did
think
not
so
like that on Tuesday at the Twins game. Like, fans were booing him when he came up. Like, what did he do? Like, he allegedly gambled. Like, one, who cares? It's just gambling. It's not like he did something actually bad. I mean, obviously
Well, I
it's
think a
but we
bad.
don't know
precedent
what he
has been
bet on.
set. We have a
Right.
guy.
Yeah.
We have the one of the best hitters of all time that's being held out of the Hall of Fame because of the exact same thing that an active player is doing.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that kind of a double standard? I mean, I don't
Yeah,
think
but
it
it's
really should
all
matter for either of them. But I'm saying, like, if Pete Rose is going to be held out of the Hall of Fame, Otani's got to be
yeah.
suspended at least.
Well, I think Pete Rose should
I
100% should
agree.
be in the Hall of Fame. I think most
Yeah.
people think that. But yeah, it's all allegations. It's nothing like
right.
set in stone yet.
I
I,
think
s-
the
But he
I,
fun
definitely he had to
oh,
have
go
known
ahead.
about it.
Oh yeah.
that's what they're saying. The total amount of money, and obviously this is not accounting for Shohei's endorsement deals, which he I think right now makes a lot more in endorsements than his actual MLB contract. But how do you not notice that amount of millions of dollars missing from your bank account unless you are truly and again, I don't know how millionaires operate. I wish I did, but if you're truly like completely out of that side of looking at your bank account and things like that, it is
Yeah.
absolutely absurd. But I thought one of the funniest things of that was I think they said the highest wager was 160,000 and the lowest was $10. So what do you think the $10 bet was on? Like some weird prop bet, like
It was
Some
probably
like
national anthem.
15 team parlay. Yeah.
15
It
team
was
parlay. Yeah.
Reba hitting the over at the national anthem.
It was probably $10 that Shohei doesn't pitch in the year of
Yeah.
2024.
Well,
Or that he gets
it's
$10
suspended.
to win a million.
I saw someone said that they did confirm that none of the bets were on baseball. So I don't know how true that is or where that information came
Yeah,
from,
we're
but
still finding out facts,
yeah,
so it's kind of fun to monitor. I mean, it's a huge story, regardless of like if you think he's involved or not. But like, how do you not know about it? It's crazy. I saw this because Twitter's just been funny with all of the memes and everything attached to it. They go, kind of crazy how much media coverage the $16 million Otani theft is getting when Javi Baez is literally in the process of stealing $140 million from the Detroit Tigers. But
You know what's funny is of the top 15 MLB players in terms of endorsement money for this year, if you go number 2 through 15, you add all those up, it's still not as much as Otani. He's supposed to make 65 million this year in endorsements.
Jeez.
Well, maybe that'll change now, but like 65 million dollars this year.
and you talk about like how baseball, and I obviously we are all fans of the game and of Mike Trout and what he's been able to do for the game for all these years. But you talk about the face of baseball being missing. Like if you were to go ask if I were to ask my wife who Mike Trout is, I'm not sure she would know who Mike Trout is or
Right.
just random people on the street. Everybody knows who Shohei Ohtani is. Like he is the face of baseball right now. So that is it. I mean, it's just a really wild story and time for all of this to get wrapped up in. So,
My mom did not know who Shohei
I was gonna
Ohtani
say I
was.
don't
okay,
think
there we
my
go.
dad probably knows who he is either.
We
I
were
mean,
just talking about that last night because I think that after we were playing them on the local news or whatever, and she's like, "Who's that tall, floppy looking guy that was getting all these cheers from the fans or whatever?" And I'm like, "Shohei?" And she's like, "Yeah, he looks like Joe Mauer." I'm like,
So,
"No," but
I guess they're like the same height,
I'm like, "Yeah, he's like the
and
best
they're
player
lefties.
in the world."
this is
But
clearly a problem in Major League Baseball then, because you literally have people clamoring that this is the new Babe Ruth, and here we are.
yeah, I just hope he comes out as innocent so he can
What
put all
if
that away. But
he gets in like legal trouble and then he just goes back to Japan and there's never
right,
comes back?
they don't care. And it would just be the greatest myth of all
like
time.
like just
What
goes
if?
back to the Yomiuri Giants or whoever he was
Wow.
playing for.
Right. And then just bets on his own games.
Yeah.
Oh my
is
gosh.
betting big in Japan? Is that like a thing, or is it he just came over
I
here and?
I have no idea.
I would
I mean, I suppose
guess not.
gambling is a big thing everywhere, but
There's horse
Yeah,
racing everywhere.
right.
Cricket.
It yeah. In Japan it says it's very specific limited circumstances like horse racing and other racing,
This
but
guy's
not
just
for
ripping
sports.
horse racing bets 24 hours a day.
I mean,
So he came over, dabbled with that $10 15 team parlay,
yeah,
and that was
and he
the
hit.
juggernaut that continued to this
Yeah.
multi-million-dollar
So
ordeal
really,
that we have going
really,
on.
he should be the face of gambling addiction. What a $10 bet can lead to.
So Shohei's made $44 million so far in his baseball career from the Angels before his new contract he hasn't even gotten paid for. And 16 of that was withdrawn over the last 2.5 years. Like
huh?
that just seems too weird.
Maybe he's got a finance guy and he never looks at his bank account and the finance guy is just like in on it or he's just like too scared to tell
Yeah.
him.
Right. Or I hope it's something more like with the translator and like Ipe took like a huge endorsement deal for Shohei that's paying him $20 million over 5 years or whatever, and Ipe's just taking the money directly and not even letting Shohei see any of it.
Either way, it doesn't look great for Shohei, right? Like you're either way too oblivious to not see $16 million go missing over the course of a couple of years, or you're involved in one of the biggest gambling sports ordeals that we've seen over the last several years. So it's not looking
Yep.
great.
Baseball's in trouble.
Yeah.
It's just like what Chris Carter says. You gotta have a fall guy. You you can't go into the league without a fall guy. I
That's
mean,
what Pete Rose said too. Wish I had a translator.
look at Rasheed Rice. News in the NFL. He just turned himself in today to Dallas PD for his high speed chase that caused like a 6 car pileup. Was that 2 weeks ago? So he's been on the run per se for like 2 weeks. Like, what are you doing?
Ugh.
It's just
Well,
some dumb
Chiefs will be
kid.
drafting a receiver.
Yeah, he had such a good year too for a rookie. When did they draft him? Was it the second round?
I thought it was end of the first.
Okay.
I thought he snuck
Either
into the
way,
first, but
he was a really good pick for fantasy, and I mean I had him in the playoff league for fantasy playoffs, and it's only 23 years old.
it's a big mistake.
So I don't. You assume that the Chiefs would cut bait, but also they had Kareem Hunt, so who knows
Well,
at this point?
yeah.
He was the 55th overall pick, so he was a little deeper in the second round.
Hmm.
Again, full circle talking about what we were talking or alluding to earlier this week in hits that the Chiefs have had post first round draft picks, like
Oh yeah, if you
late
look at the Chiefs
second.
draft history, it diamonds in the rough all over.
Pacheco in the
Remember
seventh,
Creed Humphrey when
in the
we
second.
Yeah,
we really
He's-
wanted him, but
He's
like
so good.
it blows my mind, and it's not just this front office because we couldn't draft offensive line well at all with Spielman. That was that was the reason why he was out the door. I remember talking about that on the podcast 2 years ago. Was Spielman can't draft and develop offensive linemen,
Well,
so
he
it's
took
never gonna
Darisaw and
fit.
O'Neal. Those are pretty big hits.
Yeah.
Outside of those two, we can.
Khalil was good for like 1 or 2 years.
He was a Pro Bowler,
Bradbury's been okay.
but we don't draft, and it's the zone blocking scheme. I get it, but we don't draft bigger guys. Doesn't make any sense. It says Creed Humphreys listed as a 302 pounds. What is Bradbury?
Like
He can't be that much less.
235.
Bradbury's not too.
Bradbury is
he's probably
listed.
295.
He's listed at 300.
That's what I thought. So like, maybe Creed Humphrey's number is not accurate. It's on Pro Football Reference, but it's like we were talking about like those surefire like center picks, like end of the first round, early day 2. Like they almost always hit, minus Pat Elflein
And Bradbury.
and
Remember,
Bradbury. But
remember John
he has
Sullivan?
hit.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
John Sullivan was good.
Like center's the safest pick you can make, but like you can get so much value after taking a guy like that because you'll just have him for 10 years.
I didn't know that Pat Elflein was drafted as a center.
Yeah,
Did
he
he played
as
as
their
a position
center?
forever.
He
I
still
think he
plays
played a
center.
little center, but was it his rookie year he played center, and then they moved him over and after they took Bradbury? Or
Yeah.
Was there?
Yeah, they
overlap
moved him
there?
to
Sounds
left
right.
guard in 2019. He started at center for 2 years for the Vikings. Huh. He was their starting center in 2017 in the playoffs.
Wow.
I saw some funny pictures now that we're going down this rabbit hole. Brian O'Neill got married last month, and they were posting some pictures about it on Instagram or whatever. And Pat Elflein was in some of the wedding pictures. I think it was Ben Gideon.
Wow.
There's some fun name drops from the blast of the past. It was like, whoa.
Ben Gideon
I remember
started way too many games.
Yeah.
He's like a full-time starter for 2 years.
Yeah, that was crazy. I hope we keep O'Neal, like we talked about. We can't mess with the O-line. Keep the O-line good. Build from the inside out. Only fortify the O-line.
Yeah, until we have to re-sign Darisaw in 2 years, but that's not a
Everybody's
problem
overreacting about paying Darisaw. I mean,
Like
the
Pat
cap
said,
hit's
we have
gonna go up.
$143 million.
It's
True.
It's one
But-
of the highest paid positions in the sport. You're gonna
But
have
paying
to pay 'em.
both, having 2 tackles that are both getting paid a lot of money.
I
Well,
guarantee O'Neal will not be on the roster in a year.
O'Neal's gonna restructure. He's
Yeah.
not. I mean, he'll
Or it'll be
restructure to more
restructured.
like.
It'll be something
yeah.
like that.
I'm not worried about running into issues with that. If he's gonna demand to be paid like a left tackle as a right tackle when he's older, then yeah, we'll move on. But Towns is back tomorrow
Really?
night versus the Hawks at home. First game back since what? 2 months, pretty much.
We
So,
have 2 games left in the regular season.
I think it's 2 games left. I think is it Phoenix on Sunday and Atlanta tomorrow?
that's
Does that
it.
sound right? Okay. I mean,
Yeah, 2 games.
couldn't be a better time for Cat to return from injury. I don't know if any of you were able to catch the game last night, but the Wolves ceded the first place in the West to Denver. Unfortunately, they actually did play him pretty tough for the first 3 quarters and just ran out of gas. And I think a lot of what we've seen over the last month or so, or however long Carl's been out, has been getting the ball in the hoop. Like when Ant is on, you don't need a secondary shot maker. We've seen Nikhil Alexander-Walker take that role up in recent games. Naz Reid has been incredible, but you need another consistent scorer, and Karl Anthony Towns is going to help that. So I'm glad they can get a little bit of practice run to knock a little bit of rust off before the playoffs start for us. But
Yep.
as far as seeding goes, it is we're in a dead tie right now with Oklahoma City,
We
and
can still get the first, but we do need Denver to lose one of its final two,
correct. And
and we would have to win out.
I would really want to gun for that number 2 seed, because if you're playing the number 3 seed, it's looking right now like you're going to have to match up with New Orleans possibly in the first round of the playoffs, and the Wolves just don't have anybody who can guard or matches up well with Zion. I mean, Jade McDaniels is our throw him at anybody defender, and he literally gives up 100 plus pounds to Zion, and
Yeah,
it's
that's
just
like
a tough
the one
matchup.
player in the league that doesn't really
Yeah. And I
give him fit.
believe Brandon Ingram is coming back from injury soon if he hasn't been already. So it's a tough matchup, but when you're the Wolves and you're playing for the number 1 seed, the number 2 seed in the conference, you're expected to win those playoff series. So I hope that they show us something and prove a lot of the doubters wrong as well.
So we finished the year 2-2 versus Denver, and our two losses actually were both on back ends of back to backs.
Yep.
So that's not a crutch, but when you look at it that way, you're like, when we have rest and when we're on our best, like we can match up with them toe to toe with Jokic. So I don't know. I'm excited for the first round. Whenever that matchup will be, I'm sure we'll have some more notes to talk about, some more tidbits on what we think can happen. And actually being favorited to win a playoff game will be a weird feeling. I'm sure the national media won't favorite us. They'll just count
No.
us out right away like they have all year. But it's just going to
All
be
right.
a weird feeling.
I have one question since I don't watch NBA much. So if we were the 2 seed, then we play the winner of like the play-in stuff.
Yep.
So out of these teams, who would you not want to play and who do you want to play? Out of the Suns, Kings, Lakers, Warriors. Are you scared of any of those teams like that they would upset us? I feel like the Kings we'd want to play. I don't know anything about the Kings, but
We match up decent against the Kings just with the size and them not really having a true center. Sabonis is pretty dominant of a big man, but when it comes to being up against Gobert, he's struggled in his career. As far as a matchup with Phoenix, we just got torched by them last month, and then what was it? This last week, we just played them again and fell short. So Phoenix is getting hot at the right time. I don't want to play them right away, especially if they win the play-in tournament. They're going to be even hotter, and obviously, you're facing a future Hall of Famer with Kevin Durant, and yeah, a team that can shoot the lights out is a team that we struggle with usually with rotations and such.
I
I
I I'd be scared of the Warriors still. They've won 8 out of 10. I feel like they don't even care. They don't try until they get to the playoffs. I don't know what they did last year, but
Does the
I
NBA need the Lakers to be good right now?
well, I
no.
I think that is a big concern. Just when we've matched up with the Lakers, the fouls are drastically in the favor. And honestly, with a lot of the teams, and I think we would see the same thing with the Warriors, and we saw it last night in Denver, where the whistle heavily favors some of these teams that the NBA, or at least it seems like that from a biased Timberwolves fan, but the NBA wants LeBron James in the playoffs.
Of
That being
course.
said, we I think we match up really well with LA, so that team doesn't scare me. Golden State, they don't scare me anymore. I think Steph
Yeah.
is good for 1 to 2 games of he's going to take over and explode. So it's not going to be a sweep or anything like that.
It's just the
Um,
surrounding pieces that I think
the,
just aren't there like they used to be.
Clay Thompson's not the same player. Draymond is still Draymond, but again, from a size perspective, if the Warriors are,
I do want to see that for an entertainment perspective, though, with Draymond talking shit back and forth with Ant for a
it
series.
it
That would be
it
really fun.
yeah, it would be remarkable. But like Kev said, Phoenix is the team you want to stay away from. I think again I think the Wolves would still be favored with home court advantage against Phoenix, but I think it would not be a huge favorite. And Kev alluded to this earlier, but we had in our last two games with Phoenix, we had our worst offensive game in terms of offensive rating against them, and
Yep.
also our worst defensive game in terms of defensive rating against them. Again, they're just a team that switches consistently. 3-point shooting is just phenomenal. Grayson Allen I think he's
Yeah.
like 45, 46% 3-point shooter at this point at a pretty
Yeah,
high
he
clip.
leads the league. It's
That's
crazy.
a tough team to match up against in the playoffs. So
I would
I
I would say Denver and then Phoenix if we're just looking at the West as a totality there for the playoffs of teams we don't want to
totally
I
see,
agree.
think
but
the funniest team is definitely the Clippers. Like they just have a bunch of 30-some-year-olds, and they don't even have big guys. Is Zubac even good? I'm sure he's okay, but like, what a weird team.
They have Amir Coffee.
But
oh
Yeah,
yeah, he gets in for a cup of
sure,
coffee every game.
there you
and
go.
He's been a big rotation piece actually this year for
uh,
them. Comes in, hits a couple threes. He's kind of fun to watch. It all just depends on their health with Kawhi,
They have PJ
100%.
Tucker. He's still in the league.
James Harden. I mean,
Yep,
they have all the talent in the world. They could easily just flip a switch
Yeah,
and be healthy with Kawhi, Paul George. I mean,
100%.
either
I mean,
either of them any night could go off for 40. So
even the Mavericks, they've won 9 out of 10. I mean, this is like a really competitive
the
group.
West has always been that way, and then like this year it started off kind of lousy. A lot of teams not gelling together with the chemistry and injuries. But yeah, now it's the NBA, so now everybody starts trying. So now you can start watching again now, Chris.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think I
It,
might
it,
tune in.
I might tune in. Yeah, we'll see.
I think it's a good time to do so. When the Wolves are on, they are really fun to watch, and I will be the first to admit last year was painful. That like we had a pretty ended up pretty solid, but just watching Rudy try to gel with this roster and fit in, it was
Yeah,
incredibly painful to watch. And ever since we acquired Mike Conley Jr., the chemistry has just exploded, and now we're seeing Rudy connect with a ton of different players and lot of lob dunks, and
yeah.
Anthony Edwards is a joy to watch on a nightly basis as
Gosh,
well.
where would we be if
It's
we
must
didn't
watch
draft
television.
him? Like, where would we be if we didn't draft Anthony Edwards?
I don't know. We got lucky, that's for sure.
100%.
I mean,
100%.
Okay, let me ask this: do we like Glenn Taylor or do we not like Glenn Taylor?
Oh gosh, this is a
I
whole can of
I
worms.
don't like Glenn Taylor. I don't like Glenn Taylor.
I still hate Glenn Taylor, but
He kept the team here in what, like 1990 something. What else has he done?
That is quite literally the only thing that Glenn Taylor has done for this team
and
is
he keeps
keeping the
clinging
team.
on to it like an old decrepit man. There was another article that came out today that was like uh, Mark Lore and Alex Rodriguez wouldn't have the funds to pay for, over the luxury tax. So Taylor's
That
paying $25 million over the luxury tax to keep our team competitive. We just
that's kind of what I'm
extended.
referring to.
Yeah,
Now, like he's trying to play it off that he's the savior of keeping this roster
yeah, and the
together.
other owners would cheap out and
And I
only.
read something somewhere else where they're like, that doesn't make any sense since it was A Rod and Mark Laurie that wanted to trade for Gobert.
Right.
Like they were the
So
push the catalysts for that trade. So why would they make this big trade and then not pay anybody?
yeah, and there have been a lot of rumors flying around questioning whether A-Rod and Lori have the funds to actually run the basketball team, and it sounds like they had everything to purchase the team, although it's been a painful 3+ year process of them doing this. partially because I think Glenn requested that because he wasn't ready to give up the reins in like a quick instance. But there are legitimate questions about whether or not they are financially able to pay for these high luxury tax. April, I won't get into too much depth, but the Wolves have three max contracts on their team right now. This is going to be an expensive team moving forward unless they were to trade one of those big three contracts in Gobert, Ant, or Carl Anthony Towns. And now we're seeing the media backlash. It's very clear that Glenn Taylor and or the NBA has Woj's ear, and then Shams is in the A-Rod Laurie camp because not only do we hear that Woj report about the concern for Glenn to or concern Glenn had about A-Rod and Laurie paying for this team and like future rosters and pay cuts and things like that. But today we saw a Shams report that Tim Connolly, the president of basketball operations GM for the Wolves, who has been the architect for this successful team that we have seen, has an opt out in his contract after this season. And the report with that was that A-Rod and Laurie were the guys who went out and got him from Denver and really pushed that moving forward. So with all of this uncertainty, is Tim Connolly going to say, "Hey, I'm going to jettison. I have essentially built the roster that the Denver Nuggets are currently, having the number one seed in the West, won the championship last year, and now I've built this second contender in Minnesota, which he has. Why not go take a job elsewhere, get the same amount of money, and not have to deal with the turmoil in the ownership group?" So it's going to be a long battle, and we're going to see a lot of punches thrown back and forth where we're going to see some pro Glenn stuff, we're going to see some pro A-Rod and Laurie stuff, but it's just so unfortunate that right now is when this is all coming to fruition, when the Wolves are having their best season since 2004 and are on the brink of being a top 2 seed in the Western Conference playoffs, that all of this is coming out as a distraction for the players, for the fans, for everybody involved. So
The
it's just a nasty
pessimistic
situation.
I'm just waiting
pessimistic
for it to crumble.
Exactly. The pessimistic Minnesota fan in me is thinking, "Oh, this is their best season ever. Like this is their one opportunity to get into a NBA Finals and make a splash." And then after the season, it just feels like things are gonna just collapse.
Yeah, and it very well could. And I think I, I don't want Glenn owning this team. I want the team to stay in Minnesota. I don't want Glenn owning this team. If A-Rod and Laurie don't have the funds to yield a high quality product moving forward, like a team, if we're saying, hey, this team is a contender, we need to pay these guys, we need to go and pay the luxury tax. If they can't do that, I don't want them as the owners either. We've seen NBA teams get sold in the last several years where guys have come in and wrote checks and they are the owners and that is what it is. Phoenix was sold, Utah was sold, and there was no talk about that team moving or relocating. Why can't the Wolves find a billionaire who can come in like that and buy the team, be hands off? Honestly, the Wilfs would be a really solid addition to own a second Minnesota franchise, in my opinion. So
Do they know anything about basketball?
They
I
don't
don't
know
know
anything
that
about
they know anything
football.
about football. Yeah,
I
I
mean,
don't
they
know.
like Bill.
Yeah,
They
that's
like Bill
true.
Parcells and the Giants way back in the '90s, but outside of that, I don't think they knew
Um,
much.
what I don't understand is how could they not have the funds? Mark Lore has like a couple $1 billion, and doesn't A-Rod like have 1 million like friends? Like, how are they not coming up with the funds? Like, can they get more people involved? Like, everybody knows A-Rod. Like, I don't understand how they wouldn't come up with the funds. It doesn't make
Yeah, why
sense.
can't
There's a
Derek
Mark
lot
Lore
of
Jeter
was
get
like,
in on this?
like oh gosh.
there's a lot of rumors on that side of things too, that those two haven't been talking to each other during this process. Mark Lores told A Rod that he has to come up with the remaining funds since he did the majority of the fundraising on the first go around of cash, and A Rod didn't pull up his end of the bargain. So I don't know what's true. I watched the whole podcast where they interviewed both of them, and it seemed totally fine that it was just getting blown out of proportion. But you never know. There's always more than meets the
Also,
eye. I'm
it's
just
an investment too. If you buy a team, and if we win, even if we don't win like an NBA championship, 10 years from now, when you sell the team, you're gonna make tons of money. Like it's
100%.
almost like foolproof. I mean, unless you
And
really screw up the franchise.
I think part of that reason could be why Glenn is pulling back is because the sale price that he had 3 years ago when they initially made this deal. I mean, the team is worth at least another $1 billion and has only grown in value in that time. So part of this be Glenn saying, "Hey, I want more money. Why would I give control to these guys, even if they had this ironclad contract, which they claim that it is? I want to make more money. If I have the opportunity to do that, why wouldn't I?" So it's a weird situation, and
Are we
it can't.
still like bottom five in terms of like value?
I can't imagine. I think the one thing holding us back is the lease that we have with Target Center. I believe it's a few decades long lease that we still have, and it sounds like there are ways to get out of that, but I would imagine that regardless of where we're at with that, any new owner would make a pretty big push for a new stadium, which of course again would greatly increase the value of the team as well.
Yeah, I get it, but also in basketball, like how much does the stadium really matter? You know, it's not like baseball or football where it can
Yeah.
be
I don't
like,
know. Target Center's
uh,
terrible.
yeah, but
I remember going to a
I feel like
concert
basketball teams are
at.
so like similar. Like what could be
Yeah.
better? Like yeah, obviously if everything was new,
I went
but
to a
like
concert
other
at,
NBA stadiums,
what is it, American Airlines in Orlando. That's
yeah, I've been
that
there.
that arena's 10 times better than the Target Center.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know. It's just kind of a dump. I mean,
they
they've
would want to
they've
knock it down eventually.
yeah
Yeah,
they've renovated it and stuff, but it's not nice.
yeah.
It's the
No,
worst
it's
It
not.
doesn't have
worst arena.
visibility
But is that
to the court.
preventing people from going to the games? Like, don't we sell out all the time?
I think they've sold out every home game this year. I mean that again I think just proves that if there's a quality product on the court, which has been few and far between since Glenn Taylor has taken over ownership of the Wolves, people will go to these games. They will buy the merch, they will support the team, but you have to put a good product out there, and in order to do that, you have to spend money. So I think the my solution is find some deep pocket billionaire to come in that's not Lori, that's not A Rod, that's not Glenn, start fresh. But if Glenn and A Rod and Lori had this contract and it was set, I don't see how Glenn can't look like an asshole for just pulling the rug out at the last second, which he has done multiple times, taking ownership of the franchise. I think this is like the at least the second or third time that he has determined, hey, we're not selling after all this public declaration that he was selling the team. So
Yeah, I just hope it doesn't explode on our faces during this stretch run here, and like similar to what happened last year, this time exactly, we had things going our way until Nas got hurt, Rudy punched Kyle Anderson, and Jaden punched a wall and broke his hand.
Oh
So
yeah.
it was the most Minnesota thing of all time. And we're finally building our way all the way slowly back to this moment where we sustained all the way through this year with Cat being out. He's coming back. If we can figure out a way to make that work on the court and ignore the crap off the court, at least win a playoff series. At least do that. And I think I would be happy. Minnesota fans would be
I
pretty.
mean, that would be a big accomplishment. You have the Twins and the Wolves win a playoff series in the same, 6 months.
Our bar is so low in this state.
I am
Yeah, it
I
is.
want the Western Conference Finals. That's what I'm gunning for. I think that they've shown again this whole season when they're healthy and they can gel. This is a top two team in the Western Conference. Show us, and
Yeah,
let's make a run.
right. And it's realistic too, especially with how weird the West is. We're not going to dive too deep into this because I know we've been talking a lot of hardcore Wolf stuff here for people that might not want to hear it. But if we get a good matchup in the first round or decent matchup, we could get a better matchup in the second round, maybe. With the way our team matches up with size, at least. There's just certain teams that can't match up with us, and that's why I really think we have a chance this year. It could backfire on us
I
if we get in
I
foul
feel like
trouble, injuries, but
I feel like there's definitely a fine line between if we lost in the second round, it would just be like, wow, classic, typical. I feel like if we lost in the Western Conference Finals, then everyone would be like, oh, okay, we're good, we're almost there. Like I feel like it's so like a very defined line in terms of like failure versus success. Because I won't be interested unless they legit make a run. Don't care about the first round. Don't really care about the second round. If they lost in the second round, I'd just be like, all right, whatever.
And say they make it to the Western Conference Finals, and this whole ownership stuff is still a disaster. I mean, kind of what you alluded to earlier, Pat.
it's going
It's
to be
kind of
weird.
it's an appealing team to just swoop in and buy. If there's all this, you know, uncertainty about who's going to actually own the team, you've got
Well,
Ant, you've got a team who is just in the Western Conference Finals. Like,
is
Why
A-Rod
don't
going to be allowed at the stadium?
Why
Is
don't
the
they
real
just give
question.
us the money and let us do it? Like, why don't they just
like
give
Someday
us a couple
Sports,
billion? Yeah, just
or
give us money. We could run it probably better than those guys.
I'll invest.
Yeah,
GoFundMe.
Yeah,
yeah. If we had a bigger market, you know, get 100,000 people to donate $100 each.
Easy.
I think I read this not too long ago, but the Twin Cities is a top 15 market in the NBA right now. And that's where again you hear relocation, someone's gonna come in, move the Wolves. Does the NBA really want to lose a top 15 market? Because I feel like we'd be in the same boat that Seattle is now, where it's you want to move a team back to Seattle because that was a nice top 15, that middle market. So again, I know that's always a threat in Minnesota, but with expansion supposedly looming in Vegas and Seattle, I think Minnesota's a pretty solid basketball town.
I agree. It's a basketball state as much as the hockey fans in the state, not including me, sadly. I mean, I will when they're good, but I'm a fair weather hockey fan, always have been, and I just think it's slept on for sure. With the amount of basketball talent that we're seeing in WNBA, NBA now, with a lot of those young guys coming up, it's slept on. As long as the Gophers get back, the Gophers will never get back to where they used to be, especially with
No.
the NIL crap. But that's
and
a whole different
I think
podcast.
I think too now that the Wolves have been to the playoffs. This will be the third year in a row. If they
Yep.
win a series or two as well this year, I think you'll even start to bring more fans back. For me personally, Chris, you and I were season ticket owners for I think 3 years, and
Yeah.
it's like every year they just ripped our hearts out all the time. It was like they were on the verge of becoming this rock solid team and making playoff runs, and it just always fell short, and it always just ripped your heart out. And so it's like I'm a little gun shy to get back into this team that clearly has had a great year, great couple years, and shows a lot of promise. But I'm like, am I ready to be hurt again?
I think you are, Tom, because if you read our logo a little closer, someday
Someday.
we will witness a Minnesota Sports Championship, and that includes the number one team
Is
sitting
that
right in front of our eyes
is
that
that
has the
June?
chance to do
Is
that.
someday in June?
If it
And
was, you would
then we're
be
shutting it
flipped
down.
out of your
That's
chair.
it. I,
I'm not
I'll
prepared for that. It's kind of like
I'll
us
say this.
drafting Jaden Daniels. I'm not mentally prepared to accept that.
I've been to like one Wolves game in 6 years. If they make the NBA Finals, I'd drop like $500. I'd go to NBA Finals game for sure.
They're going to
Like
be
even if it was
expensive, that's
upper
for
level.
sure.
Yeah, I don't know what it would be, but I'd pay like I'd probably pay $500 to go to an NBA Finals game.
$500 to go to a Wolves game. Man.
Yeah, but I've gone to one game in 6 years, and it was with Kevin, and the tickets were free. So I've spent $0 on the Wolves in 6 years.
Okay, but it's still
Wolves
$500 price
Wolves
tag.
playoff games are
Yeah,
super
but-
fun. I went to the play-in game against the Clippers a couple years back, and then I also went to the playoff game with Jimmy Buckets, and we beat
That's
We
the
beat
last
That was
Houston.
the
game I
last
went
game
to.
I was at, too.
Yeah. Haven't been back. Yeah.
That was epic. We were so loud, and we actually you feel like you're making a difference. I mean, it's similar to the Twins playoff games last year. Like we're just so starved for something to latch onto that when we finally get there, it might not seem like it now because everyone's so pessimistic. I'm like, oh, what's going to happen? What's going to go wrong? We don't want to, like Tom said, we don't want to buy in. We don't want to get in the cold water. We're just kind of tiptoeing in. We go up to our shins, a little bit to our waist, and then we're just too scared to
Then it gets to the waist, and
get
it's
all
like, I'm getting out of here.
right. So I'm hoping this could be the year that we finally, get baptized.
Just
Let's
dive right in.
Let's do it.
Listen,
I think
this is a Wolves, or it is a basketball state. You know, we've got one of the better AAU programs in the country. The Wolves have always been popular, and even when they've struggled at times. But like, that would be something if the Wolves win a couple series.
I think that's what we have to be hopeful for. Obviously, we have the draft, but right in the midst of all this is going to be Wolves. So you gotta just keep grinding and keep talking about it, hoping for good things. And I'm just as excited as hopefully Chris and Tom. I know Pat's ready to howl. So
I'll get back into it. I'll watch the playoffs.
we got 2 more games here tomorrow night and Sunday. So like we said with the seeding, it could be kind of a pre-playoff atmosphere.
We're 18-1 to win the NBA Finals right now. Or
I bet
about there.
Shohei is going to take those odds.
18-1. Should we put $1,000 on it? We could win 18 grand.
Yeah.
I mean, sure.
Jeez.
This is how pessimistic I am with betting. I would be like, you could do $1,000 to win 18 grand, or could we just do $1,000 to win half of that for them to make the NBA Finals? It's like
I feel like whoever
more
makes it out of
confident.
the West is just going to lose to the Celtics.
Celtics are freaking good.
Because won't it just be Celtics Bucks in the Eastern Conference Finals? Like it'll be those two, and
Yeah.
then if the Celtics roll them over, they're going to be so fresh, and then whoever comes out of the West, it's going to be like a big battle. And then the
Yeah.
Celtics will just,
And
I feel like they're
Giannis
due.
has a calf strain right now, so he's out. I think they said around 2 weeks, so he might miss the first round of the playoffs
Right.
too. So
yeah.
it's
And
Dame
those
time.
Celtics got to be hungry because they haven't won a championship. Nuggets just won. Bucks won 2 or 3 years ago. Like Celtics are the other top team that they haven't won it yet. I mean,
Well, thanks for joining in, guys. It was another fun episode. Just kind of shooting the crap here. A lot of time to pass until we start getting into the heat of things. We got the Masters this weekend. It'll be fun
Oh,
to
yeah.
tune in on that. Keeps us excited for this kind of spring, and hopefully the Twins start being a real team by the next week or two. But that might take a while, and that's a whole different topic for a different day. So we'll focus on our Wolves and the draft for now. A lot more episodes coming up here with all of that, and hope you guys have a good weekend. We'll talk to you guys next week. Skol.
Let's go.
all right, Skull.
Go Wolves.